Any questions you might get will be answered in the second part of this video. Please watch until then before commenting about any inaccuracies you see. Thank you and enjoy.
Kept you waiting, huh? Now. There. Now. This is Snake. I'm done here.
Alright, we gotta talk about all that, right? Obviously we do. First things first, this is for version 13.0.1 of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is confirmed to be the last balanced patch this game is ever getting. There might be another patch someday in the future to address a yet to be discovered game-breaking bug or to patch in amiibo support of a currently unreleased amiibo or something, but I'm pretty sure no character's recovery will ever be altered in a patch again. But if it does and you're watching this after it has, I'm not doing this a third time. Anyways, what was my method of testing every recovery? Well, with every single character, I first checked all possible ways to recover a few times to see which gets me the furthest, and once I figured that out, I gave it a bunch of attempts, at least 10 every time, and then placed a sticky note on my TV on the training room square I landed on, and if I got a square further, I would give it at least another 10 tries minimum. Then in my editing software, I check with what attempt I got the furthest in pixels, which would then obviously be the one I'd use for the actual ranking. By the way, they're all based on the blocks in the background of the training stage, meaning that characters that landed on the same block are still ranked the same, though the order I showed them in is based on who got further in said block. The precise pixel position of every recovery is based on the arrow below the name tag, since that's always on the middle of the character model, which means that white characters like Bowser technically have a slightly better recovery, but it's not a big deal since there are also very thin characters in the game. It's equalized like that anyways. Also about pixels, if you zoom in it'll be fuzzy and hard to make out where the character landed exactly, which is because they obviously zoomed in to not show the left side of the stage, meaning that anti-aliasing is making the view blurrier. But don't worry, I checked every recovery's precise spot before I zoomed in with editing. If two characters tied to the pixel, I based who I showed first on their fighter number, and if the middle of the arrow above a character's head landed exactly on top of a line, I counted it as if they landed on the square after the line, to account for magnet hands a little bit. I set my C stick on my controller to special for this video, so that I could input up special or any other specials without letting go of forwards on the control stick and thus losing a little bit of forwards momentum. Then when I landed, I held shield and centered it on my character by letting go of the control stick, take a screenshot and mark down their recovery distance. I also counted the distance a character slides on the ground after landing with some specials, because that slide is the result of some extra air momentum which would help you recover further anyways. I'm very confident in assuring you that this ranking is about as accurate as it gets. There might be a tiny handful of recoveries shown where you can manage to get a square or two further, but even then, I really did my best to utilize every recovery tool each character has to the fullest. One big thing about the way this is structured that kinda sucks but I couldn't do much about is the fact that every character's grounded jump is also used for their ranking in this video, which obviously wouldn't be possible if you get launched off stage and actually have to recover from midair, since there's no ground to jump off of. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal since characters with high mid-air jumps tend to have high grounded jumps as well, but just keep in mind that technically speaking every character's recovery shown in this video is a tiny bit worse by a varying amount because in actual recovery scenarios, their grounded jump height wouldn't be taken into consideration. This list also does not account for a character's ability to recover vertically at all, just horizontally. I'll be making a vertical recovery tier list video sometime after this video, which if it's already out by the time you're watching this, it'll be linked at the end of this video and also in the top right of your screen right now. Also, I excluded every tether recovery. This is because there's no way to accurately measure them on the training stage. I thought of doing something similar to what I did 3 years ago in my old vertical recovery tier list video, where I take a screenshot of the farthest you can possibly recover with said tether recoveries on a custom stage, and then paste it over it with the footage here. But that doesn't work with horizontal recoveries because the ranking would arbitrarily change depending on how high off the ground I would place this hypothetical ledge to grab onto, or how close to the ground I would use their tether moves. For some characters like Young Link and Toon Link, this isn't a big deal since usually their regular method of recovering is better than their optional tether anyways, but for others like Min Min and Joker without Arsene, this really sucks because that is their regular recovery, it's not optional. So I apologize for that, but I don't think there's anything better I could have done instead. There's a very obscure but still very important mechanic in this game called coyote time, where after running off an edge, you still have a very short window to perform your first jump, and not your double jump, even though you're technically airborne. It differs per character how long this window is based on run speed and such, but if you dash off an edge from your teetering animation, then this window is 4 frames for every character. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, the very popular indie game Celeste has the same mechanic. There's a Twitter thread by Maddie Thorson, the creator of the game, where she goes over a bunch of small hidden mechanics in the game to make it a bit smoother to control, and coyote time is the first one in the thread. You might have seen this tweet of hers at some point explaining it. Now, why am I bringing this mechanic up? Because if you do this in Smash, you start your aerial journey at pretty much full momentum since you started with a dash, which would help you get a tiny bit further. So for pretty much every recovery shown in this video, I started by abusing coyote time. Every character that can use explosives to hit and launch themselves to recover, I recorded at 70%. 3 years ago when I made the first horizontal recovery tier list video, I did these recoveries at 0%, which was stupid because you never get launched off stage with no damage taken. Now as for why I chose 70 specifically, I thought it was a nice middle ground between no damage taken and something like 140 where you're likely to get KO'd if you get launched off stage. Some characters get further with their directional air dodge than their up special, or other specials, like Crom for example, while others can get high up enough to be able to use both their air dodge and their up special like Pac-Man, which almost always is better than double jumping as late as possible and then using up special. With every character that utilizes an air dodge, I tested what direction gets you the furthest, which changes sometimes depending on air acceleration or how high up I can air dodge. But diagonally up was almost always the best direction anyways, with a few tiny exceptions like Younglink. Just because a move alters your momentum doesn't mean it actually helps you get any further. Think stuff like Mario's cape or Ness's PSI magnet. In a real match, moves like this can be useful when recovering to stall for a bit and throw off your opponent who might try to edgeguard you. But in this video, if you don't see me use a momentum altering move, it's because it doesn't help you get any further. Trust me, I tested pretty much all of them. Some characters could start on the right training mode battlefield platform with a certain grounded special or other moves to give themselves a boost in recovering, but this would obviously be cheating since you can't do that if you're launched off stage. Some notable examples are Falcon and Ganondorf with down special, Mim and Sonic Mega Man with up special, Simon with down tilt, and Pikachu and Luigi with fully charged side special. There are a lot of recoveries where the character first falls a tiny bit before they start going upwards. I made sure to never count recoveries where I touch the ground in this small period, since that would also be cheating. If at any point it looks like I might have touched the ground before going upwards with a special, trust me, I didn't. I checked in frame by frame mode if I did every time. I think I got closest to doing this without actually touching the ground, of course, with Winged Form Sephiroth. It was really tight to burn all my double jumps first so that I got high enough to air dodge first, and then also be able to up B without touching the ground, but I'm glad he was able to. On the opposite side of the spectrum, it's upsetting how close you can get to be able to do this with Mario. I tried so many times, but it's not possible to get high enough to air dodge first and then also up B without touching the ground first in this small period before going upwards. So much for Jumpman, am I right? One last thing, some of you might know that I did the same video 3 years ago, now shortly after Smash Ultimate launched. This was so long ago that Piranha Plant hadn't even released yet, and at the time of that video I promised I'd do it again when all DLC is out. Sora, the final DLC character, has now released, and since then I've been working on this. Not only have all the DLC characters been included in this video obviously, but a lot of non-DLC characters' recoveries have been changed in balance patches since then, like Diddy Kong's up special, which now travels further when fully charged, meaning that he of course got further than last time as well. There are a lot of other cases where I got further than in the previous video with certain recoveries, which is mostly because since the game has been out a lot longer now, I've learned how to more optimally recover with some characters. For instance, I now know that if you use the kick at the peak of Zero-Suit Samus's flip jump, you maintain a ton more momentum and can go way further. Okay, so now that we got the global stuff that affects every character out of the way, let's talk about the character-specific things I need to talk about. But first, I want to mention that this video is not sponsored by anyone, but I do want to let you know that I finally started a Patreon. Some of my videos take a long time to make. For example, the one you're watching right now has been in active development since Sora released, which is well over half a year ago now. Because of this, I sometimes unfortunately have pretty long droughts between uploads, and when that happens, views and ad revenue drop, sponsor interest drops, and I debate if I should go back to my old crappy job at McDonald's, because at least that way I have some consistency in my life. Obviously, I don't want to do that, so if you support me on Patreon, it can help me out more than you can imagine. I'm not gonna keep this Patreon plug too long since you can just check the page out for yourself, which is linked in the description, and I would really appreciate it if you did. One of the tiers will give you access to commentary videos of my videos where I go over how I make them and some fun behind the scenes details, which I'll also be making about the video you're currently watching very shortly after it's uploaded. Anyways, yeah, let's get into the character specific stuff now. Let's start with some lightning round explanations first that won't take up too much time, and then we'll get into more detailed stuff. Shulk's Buster and Smash Monado arts don't affect recovery at all. They get the exact same distance as Shulk without an art activated. Having a Thunder Tome with Robin means you can charge it for a bit, which helps preserve momentum. And if you're almost out of Wind Tomes when doing up B, you can only shoot out one Elwind instead of 2, meaning there are 6 combinations of recovery for him. Wario can have no waft, a half-charged waft, and a fully charged waft, alongside having and not having access to his bike, also making for 6 combinations. With Kazuya, I didn't use side special because you can't use it if you've already used up special, and vice versa. As a duo, Ice Climbers actually get a tiny bit further with up special than with side special. It's just that side special is a lot safer in an actual match. There are some more recoveries where the safer option is what you often see in real matches, but for this video it's all about distance, safety be damned. Inkling gets further when she has some ink in her tank because that means she can use side special, which essentially acts as a second mid-air jump. You can't do this if she doesn't have any ink. Sonic has a tech called Spin Shot, which essentially is just you burning your double jump and releasing Spin Dash at the same time to get all that momentum into a big aerial burst, which helps you recover further, and I learned how to do it for this video. Yeah, Wii Fit Trainer actually gets a little further if you don't use deep breathing first. This is because while her airspeed increases, her jump height decreases. It doesn't change by a whole lot at all, but it is of course worth noting. Bayonetta gets access to a second afterburner kick if you hit your first one, which is why I included both with and without hitting someone first. Shout out to my brother for controlling the Jigglypuff test dummy here. For Mr. Game & Watch, I included both with and without using bucket, because if you get launched off stage with a full bucket, you won't be able to use it to carry your momentum for a bit. Wasting it first to still use it will not get you further. With Bowser Jr., it's pretty unlikely to have the recovery play out in the same way that I showed with the Mecha Koopa exploding, but I wanted to include it anyways because screw it, it's fun. And I mean, it's still infinitely more likely than getting launched off stage as Peach holding a Bob-omb. Speaking of which, Peach and Daisy theoretically have a way better recovery when holding a Bob-omb, right? Which they have a 1 in 250 chance of pulling with down special. While yeah, this is technically true, it's ridiculously unlikely. Because if you're holding one and get launched by an attack strong enough to send you into double state, aka getting launched off stage, it explodes immediately, so you'd have to be thrown while holding a Bob-omb for this to work. Which, again, you have a 1 in 250 chance, or 0.40% of pulling anyways. And if you really want to know when all planets align and this actually happens, they can reach the blast zone, even though it easily kills them at 70%. And speaking of RNG, in all my Luigi attempts, I never got more than 1 misfire. The best I got with a misfire was 14, but in that attempt I wasted time charging the side B that became a misfire, so I could have gone even further. Obviously, it's pretty much impossible to reliably test Luigi's recovery with this luck-based thing, so I decided to save myself some sanity and a few hours by just not including his recovery with 1 or even more misfire. Snake can't use his grenades to blow himself up and help him recover, at least not on the training stage, because similarly to Peach holding a Bob-omb, if Snake gets hit while holding a grenade, he either just drops it or it explodes, meaning that you'd have to pull it after you've been launched, and they have too long of a fuse to blow up quick enough before he touches the ground on the training stage. I even tried doing a mega fancy thing where I throw the grenade upwards, then catch it as an item and let it explode, and then repeat that, which isn't really realistic either. And even then he goes a little too deep under the stage for me to count it. Also yeah, he kicks the air so hard with down air that it helps him preserve a little momentum and does get a bit higher. Fox also kicks so fast with forward air that it helps him get a bit higher too. I guess he spins his legs so fast they act as helicopter blades, which is metal as hell. And I used up air with Pac-Man because yeah, it actually helps him recover a bit. It's not nearly as much as something like Fox's forward air, but it's still something. The Duck Hunt Duo recovery using Trick Shot could be considered cheating how I did it, but the idea was that I think it's possible to kick the can and keep it near you to hit yourself with the explosion while in freefall from up special all without touching the ground, and then using up special again after that. Obviously this is insanely hard to do, and I couldn't do it at all, let alone while trying to get as far as possible with it. So I just opted to leave it on the ground near where they would land and then shoot it when I get close without touching the ground. If you're a Duck Hunt Duo main and you can do this for your recovery, you're insane and I commend you for it. And I didn't actually know this before making this video somehow, but Link's bombs actually explode on their own after a while, just like Young Link and Toon Link's bombs. The catch is that it takes way longer, a whopping 30 seconds total in fact. You might think this could theoretically help you recover if you get launched off stage with a bomb in your hands, and the timing just so happened to work out in such a way that it explodes right after your up special, and yeah, I guess you're right, but if a bomb explodes on its own in your hands, it doesn't always send you the same way. It's either random or there's some sort of timing mechanic with up special I don't know about that determines if you'll be launched forwards or backwards. And on top of that, there's definitely always a random chance for Link to drop the bomb when getting hit, so you can't rely on that either. So unless you get knocked off stage while also having held a bomb for 27-ish seconds, and also actually being in high enough percent to be knocked off the stage in the first place, and also getting lucky to not drop the bomb when you get launched, and when it explodes you also get sent forwards towards the stage, yeah, you get the point, this isn't very realistic at all. Also, since I recorded everyone that blows themselves up at 70%, I was actually able to hit the blast zone with Link using rune bombs, but the timing was insanely tight, so I was only able to do it with the training mode's frame by frame mode, and even then it took like 5 minutes. If I kept going I could have easily died off the top, so technically Link also has an infinite recovery like Snake. The main difference is just that Snake can do it at any percent, while you need to have some good amount of damage beforehand with Link to do it, and have insane timing. Anyways, yeah, with Mithra, quickly switching to Pyra and back to Mithra again before and after your double jump actually helps a tiny bit. So then why did I also include the solo version? For the nerds that say they solo main her, I suppose. I mean, I did the same thing with Squirtle and Ivysaur after all too. But not for Charizard, since they by far have a better recovery than Squirtle or Ivysaur, so not switching as Zard is always optimal for recovery. For Little Mac, I included both with and without side B, because you lose it if you get hit out of it or after it, which famously regularly happens to him. Similarly with Zero Suit Samus, I included both with and without flip jump, because if you get hit out of flip jump before touching the ground, you don't get it back, severely hindering her recovery. Doesn't happen often, but down special is her best recovery tool by far, and I've definitely seen it happen a few times before, so it's not super unlikely. This is why it's the only other case of this, barring Little Mac's side special, why I decided to include it. Corrin's back air boosts him forwards a bit, so if you're going backwards because you were hit off stage with a move that doesn't turn you around, you can use side B real quick to face the other way, and thus be able to do a back air to aid your recovery. In this training stage measurement, you won't have enough time to do 2 back airs though. Kinda similar to that, but not really, Terry's Burning Knuckle gets you a little further than Crack Shoot, his back special, but you can't do Burning Knuckle if you're going backwards, even though you can always use Crack Shoot. So I included both forwards and backwards recovery. Trying to B-reverse a neutral special or something to turn around first like what we did with Corrin's side special does not help at all. His charged up special goes a tiny bit higher, but for horizontal recovery it's still better to not charge it, because the time you have to hold down to charge it, and thus not forward, makes you lose distance overall, even if you hold down in the corner and still forwards. Also, both side specials are mutually exclusive, meaning you can't use both in the air, you have to touch the ground first. Speaking of fighting game characters, Ryu's true Tatsumaki and Shoryuken inputs don't actually make them travel further, and Ken's specials go exactly the same distance as Ryu's, meaning that they have the exact same recovery distance. You might know that Ken is faster than Ryu, but that's only the case on the ground. In the air they have the exact same airspeed, meaning that Ken doesn't get an edge there either. Most other Echoes have the same recovery power as their non-Echo counterparts by the way, with the obvious exception being Roy and Chrom since they have different up specials. Now I know what you're thinking, PJiggles, what do you mean Samus and Dark Samus don't have the same recovery? They have the exact same stats and moveset, right? Surely you just didn't try hard enough to get as far as Samus with Dark Samus, right? Well, no actually. Dark Samus was shown separately because I believe she has a slightly worse recovery than Samus. In the past 2 recovery videos I made, she got a tiny bit less far than Samus, which also rings true for this one. I have no idea what causes this, but it has happened consistently for the past 3 years. At first I thought it might have something to do with her crouching down a bit during her double jump animation or something, but that can't be it since you can just cancel that by using an aerial. And even then my test yielded the same results. Truly one of Smash Ultimate's greatest mysteries to me. The difference isn't very significant at all, but it is enough to have an entire recovery ranked between them, namely Joker with Arsene. One thing I do know a little too much about now after this videos is the recoveries of the Miis. Let's talk about them for a bit since I'm sure you have some questions about how I tackled their recoveries this time around. They have 3 different specials to choose from for each special attack direction, making for 81 total combinations possible per class. I checked which moves would alter their recovery even a little, made each combination possible using those moves a Mii fighter, tested every single one of them, and then using math I deduced how far every remaining possible moveset combination could get depending on which recovery tools they have access to. For instance, every combination where Mii Brawler has access to this flip jump and helicopter kick can of course do exactly the same thing shown in the recovery, and get just as far. It doesn't matter what side or neutral special you have. Every Mii special move has a number attached to it, either 1, 2, or 3, and in the moveset menu, they are displayed in the order of neutral, side, up, and down. The list full of numbers that drop down with every Mii recovery you saw is referencing those movesets, which I'm sure you already figured out, especially if you are a Mii main who I did this all for in the first place, but I thought I'd mention it anyways for everyone else. In some cases, the same Mii class would get to the same square on the training stage with different moves used, but I bundled those all together and only showed the one where I got the furthest in said squares, to avoid showing the Miis way too much. To make a very long story short, if your Mii has the moveset shown in the list, then that is the furthest they can possibly make it with the specials they have in said moveset. There's a bit more to Mii Gunner though. Their forward air shoots them backwards with boosted momentum, which can obviously help you with recovery just like with Corrin's back air. And just like with him, you can B-reverse a special to face the correct way first, so you can do a forward air backwards if you're launched while facing forwards. But again, just like with Corrin, if you do that, you won't have time to do 2 of them sadly, only 1. All 3 down specials and neutral special 1 can be used for this. Charge Blast, Reflector, and Vortex are all equally effective at this, while the Bomb drop down special beats them by 1 square, probably because it doesn't change your momentum at all compared to the other 3 moves. Because of all this turnaround stuff, for this video I think it'd help to pretend there are 4 Mii classes: Brawler, Sword Fighter, Gunner, and Gunner facing backwards. I think you can imagine that all the Mii fighter stuff for this video took me way longer than some entire videos I've made. And speaking of facing the right way when recovering, Ridley goes upwards a little bit during up special if you go backwards, and downwards if you go forwards. So you might think you'd get further with him if you face backwards, right? Well, no, because Ridley is a character with multiple mid-air jumps, meaning that if you double jump the other way you're facing, you'll turn around, which characters that don't have multiple mid-air jumps don't do. You could circumvent this by using an aerial every time you double jump, but that doesn't work either since you just turn around anyways with side special. And no, turning around with your last double jump doesn't help you either. If you can pull and catch a bomb with Banjo, you can pretty much always pull and catch another. It's just a lot harder since the second mid-air bomb jump pull doesn't give you a small hop, meaning you have to burn a double jump for it. Speaking of rear egg, you could say that for the attempts where I didn't use it to grab the bomb and launch myself, I could have at least just used it once without going backwards to make use of the small hop it gives you. And yeah, you're absolutely right, I could have easily done that. For the one where I also don't have any golden feathers to use, that is. For all the recoveries without blowing myself up but with using Wonder Wing, I don't have the time to do the little hop and also use Wonder Wing in a way that would still make it optimal because of rear X and lag. So this is really only an issue with the worst recovery for Banjo, using no resources at all. And the reason why I didn't use it there is admittedly pretty stupid. In the display it said without rear egg. Like, at all. I just wanted to stupidly be consistent with that. And if you're wondering, the difference if you do use the rear egg is almost 2 blocks. The Steve recoveries shown are a bit weird. Actual stages have a dedicated zone you can place blocks in, which is always around the stage, so you can't place blocks too far off stage. That's not too much of an issue on the training stage since you can place blocks pretty much anywhere 7 blocks above the ground. This is why I also included a Steve slot without placing any blocks at all while still using up my inventory for minecarts, since usually when sent far off stage as Steve, you don't use any blocks at all to make it back on stage. There are also a million different combinations of things you can have in your inventory, so I used 2 different inventory amounts for Steve, starting and empty. I was also going to do attempts with a full inventory, which for minecart attempts meant I get a small boost because of the redstone first, but because of that I can only use 1 minecart instead of 2, since the small boost makes the first one stay on the stage and not despawn, meaning I couldn't use the second one. I could use minecart a little early to ensure that it despawns first, but if I did that I didn't get any further. I'm sure that on an actual stage this would make a difference since the first minecart would actually despawn before using a second one. While making this video, a crazy specific elytra angle was found that makes Steve's up special ridiculously good. I tried mastering it for this video and I think I got pretty much on point, but it's always possible that I still didn't do it completely optimally. So take my attempts with a grain of salt, even though it's a ridiculously good recovery anyways. Speaking of Steve blocks, Kirby gets only 4 blocks to place with his starting inventory when he gets to Steve's ability, which is still more than enough to easily give him one of the best recoveries in the game. At least on the training stage, which like I said has very unrealistic spots you can place Steve's blocks. He had a better recovery than Rob in this video, but realistically Rob would still easily trounce Kirby with any ability he got, except maybe Monado Jump Art. And since we're talking about Kirby anyways, let's go over his abilities for a while. I only showed abilities that boost recovery, obviously. Monado Arts is the only one that can both boost and hinder it, so that's why I showed all of those, even if it made his recovery less good. I couldn't get further with using Robin's neutral special, even though it can help Robin himself a good bit. Kirby's multiple double jumps go higher if he's holding a spawned hand grenade, so not if he shield drops it and then picks it up as an item. Ironically, it doesn't boost Snake's double jump height because it's already very high. The reason I also included Kirby using only one hand grenade is because it's possible to lose your ability after getting hit by the first explosion, thus making it so you can't pull another one. He didn't lose his ability in the video because, well, it's a random chance if that happens or not, and it was really annoying to keep doing this until I lost it on my first grenade hit. Yes, I tried for a while. Theoretically, Kirby could go farther with Sonic's homing attack if the Sonic tries to edgeguard him and fails miserably, but testing it was kind of unreliable, so I opted to not include it in the rankings. Same goes for Sonic himself. Sora's Firaga actually helps Kirby get a little more distance, which isn't the case for Sora. It's great for stalling him for a bit, but it doesn't boost recovery. I also tested Blizzaga and Thundaga of course, but I couldn't get further with those with either Sora or Kirby. So this only works if you're launched as Kirby with Sora's ability, while also being on Firaga in the selection menu. Originally, I also included Rob with an empty fuel tank, which I later removed because I realized Olimar has the same mechanic where his up B needs to charge, and I wasn't about to add another 20 Olimar slots for that. I did record the Rob attempts with an empty fuel tank, so I might as well still show it here, but I think I have a pretty reasonable excuse to not put it in the actual rankings, let alone the fact that Villager and Isabelle also have this mechanic. Lucario's aura maxes out at 190%, not 999%. Technically, Lucario is at quote-unquote default strength according to the game's code at 65%, and is actually weakened when below that, which I think means he's at half aura power when at 127%, but that's rather high and I didn't know if that's entirely accurate, so for his half aura recovery I went with 95%, which is 190 aka max power divided by 2. And speaking of Brawl characters, guess whose time in the spotlight it is? Olimar! Woo! So yeah, most of you probably know by now that Olimar's speed during up special depends on how many Pikmin he's holding, and what type of Pikmin they are, as they weigh him down. Red, yellow, and blue Pikmin have the exact same weight, white Pikmin are the lightest, and purple Pikmin are the heaviest. He can hold either 1, 2, 3, or 0 Pikmin, meaning there are 20 combinations of different amounts he can be weighed down, which of course range between 3 purples and 1 white, followed of course by no Pikmin at all. The rest is pretty self-explanatory, so I quickly want to mention that those cool Pikmin stock icons you saw which don't exist in Smash were made by my good friend and incredible artist extraordinaire, Pinky Bowtie. His socials are in the description, so go check him out. And while Olimar may have shown up a ton like last time, there's a new king in town and his name is Hero. Or Luminary? Whatever. Hocus Pocus can both shrink him down or make him grow big, which hinder and boost your airspeed respectively. Accelerado is the only other spell that changes recovery, as it also massively boosts your airspeed and jump height. He has 4 levels of up special and zoom of course, making for 25 total combinations. Swoosh, level 2 up B, sometimes actually gets you further than K-Swoosh, level 3 version. K-Swoosh is way better for vertical recovery though, but even with Accelerado and certain sizes changing your airspeed, the difference horizontally isn't a lot. Poor Snake no longer has the best recovery in the game. Alright, let's talk about that one. I put an asterisk next to infinite when describing his recovery because, well, it's obviously not truly infinite. Knockback skills depending on damage, and while you can often tech against the stage to easily recover from some insane depths, if you get launched hard enough you won't be able to tech at all because of a universal mechanic in Smash Ultimate, meaning that eventually the C4 will KO you as you're either just gonna be sent into the blast zone, or get hit against the stage so hard you can't stop your momentum with a tech and thus also go into the blast zone. He still has an insane recovery though if he has access to his C4. Hero beats him, sure, but you don't always have access to zoom either since you can get unlucky of course. I'd say Rob actually has the best recovery in the game when it comes to horizontal distance, assuming he has a full tank, which even if he doesn't his recovery is still really good. But if you do want to take the varying fuel tank into consideration, then Jigglypuff probably has the best recovery in the game with absolutely zero gimmicks attached. Which makes sense, of course, as Jigglypuff is the greatest character in Smash Bros. History. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Like I said, sometime after this I'm going to be remaking my old vertical recovery tier list as well, just like I just did with my old horizontal recovery video. And since there's no more DLC coming out for this game, I won't have to do this a third time in another 3 years, unless a new Smash game is out by then. My upload schedule this year hasn't quite been what I wanted it to be, and I fully blame this video for it. I genuinely meant it when I said this video has been in active development since Sora came out last October. And even then I've been writing notes and keeping track of recovery, buffs, and nerfs for this video since the original was uploaded in January of 2019. So technically you could say this video has been in the works for 41 months, or 3.4 years. That all being said though, because of how much time and effort went into this video, and most of my videos actually, I'd again really appreciate it if you could check out my newly created Patreon. And if not, I'd be thankful if you just left a like or subscribed. Let me know how highly your main scored in this video, and with that, I hope to see you again shortly. Have a great day.
Now.